On the world of Orinthia, violet skies stretched endlessly over vast silver forests. Every morning, pale light washed over the white crystal palace where Princess Miranda lived. Her home rose like a shining beacon on a high plateau, its spires twisting toward the sky. Beneath those spires, marble floors rang with her soft footsteps. The halls were wide and cool, lined with columns carved from single blocks of ice-white quartz. Every surface gleamed, yet everything felt empty. Miranda stood at the grand window of her private chamber and watched the first rays of dawn. Long ago, the people of Orinthia had filled these halls with voices and laughter. Now, only her own voice echoed back. She remembered childhood days when young nobles ran along these corridors, racing to reach her side. Now, their footsteps were silent. Now, she was alone. Her skin was pale lavender, and her eyes held the calm of still lakes. Her hair fell in waves like soft moonlight. Though many admired her grace and wisdom, they whispered about her odd features. They called her strange in hushed tones. As a child, Miranda had not noticed their whispers. She had simply played in the rose gardens and watched the crystal fountains sparkle. But as she grew taller and her features grew sharper, she sensed that others did not see her the way she saw herself. She felt a gap forming between her and her people. Each morning, she donned a simple robe of pale silver thread. The fabric flowed around her like a gentle mist. She walked through the silent dining hall, where long tables of polished marble sat empty. Plates of fruit lay untouched, their bright oranges and deep reds growing cold. She paused at the head of the table and reached out to touch a bowl of star berries. Their tangy scent reminded her of childhood feasts, when the hall sat filled with song. Miranda carried her bowl into the courtyard drenched in soft violet light. The courtyard was vast, with a single fountain at its center. Water fell in delicate arcs, catching the dawn light and scattering tiny rainbows across the stone. She knelt beside the fountain and dropped a single star berry into the water. As it sank, she closed her eyes and told the stone walls what she wished for: a friend, a companion, someone who could see past her odd features to the soul beneath. The wind stirred, carrying the scent of silver pine from the forest beyond the palace walls. Miranda rose and walked toward the edge of the courtyard. She gazed out at the endless trees. She remembered stories of brave explorers who had ventured among those trees and returned with tales of shimmering waterfalls and hidden valleys. She longed to explore those places herself, but duty bound her to the throne. A princess must remain in her palace until she found a mate or until her people chose a new leader. In the council chamber, gold leaf lanterns hung like floating stars. Empty chairs surrounded a polished stone table. Here, Miranda held weekly audiences with her advisors. Today, she found the chamber colder than usual. She drew her silver cloak tight around her shoulders and stepped forward into the high-ceilinged room. The advisors bowed, their voices respectful but distant. They spoke of grain shipments, of border patrols, of ancient treaties. Miranda responded with gentle words and firm decisions. She guided them with quiet strength, always mindful of doing what was best for her world. After the council meeting, she walked along the palace garden. Here, crystal pots wound between marble statues of ancient rulers. She paused by a statue of her grandmother, who had once led Orinthia through its darkest winter. Miranda placed her hand on the statue's cold stone and imagined the warmth of her grandmother's embrace. She drew a slow breath. She had the same heart as that ruler, the same capacity for courage and care. She would show her people that strength could come in many forms. As the sun climbed higher, Miranda entered the library. Thousands of scrolls and books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. She moved among them, her fingers brushing spines of leather bound in gold. She chose a history scroll and unrolled it on a low table. She read accounts of great alliances and of worlds joining together in friendship and trade. She wondered if Orinthia could one day join hands with distant civilizations. A soft chime echoed through the hall. Miranda looked up, expecting a guard or a messenger. She saw no one, only the swaying shadows of the twisting columns. She closed her eyes and let her mind wander to dreams of companionship. She imagined laughter in the dining hall, fresh voices among the silent walls, and a gentle hand to hold in moments of uncertainty. When she returned to her chamber at midday, the violet sky glowed more brightly. She stood at her window and watched a single silver bird glide toward the horizon. In that moment, Miranda felt a spark of hope. Perhaps one day, someone would walk these halls with her, someone who would see the light in her eyes and the warmth in her heart. Until then, she would remain patient. Until then, she would rule her lonely throne with kindness and quiet grace, waiting for the day when her wish would be answered. Scouts returned at dawn with news that sent shivers through the silent palace. They had spotted a human starship entering the system, its hull gleaming against the violet dawn. The scouts described strange symbols etched along its side and a low hum that carried on the wind. Miranda stood by her window as the first report reached her ears. She felt her heart quicken with hope and curiosity. After centuries of solitude, the arrival of outsiders stirred something new within her. Spark of possibility. In the council chamber, mirrors of polished crystal reflected anxious faces. Advisors whispered among themselves, voices hushed like secrets in a sacred temple. The head scout, his uniform stained with silver dust from the forest, recounted how the ship had hovered above the outer moons before turning toward Orinthia's capital. "They observe us," he said, bowing his head. "We know little of their intent." A hush fell over the chamber, broken only by the distant echo of water from the courtyard fountain. Chancellor Isan, a tall figure draped in robes of deep blue, rose from his seat. His eyes, pale and sharp, swept the room. "Humans are known for their cunning and strength," he said. "They bring both gifts and danger. We must not show fear, but we must not act rashly." Some advisors nodded in agreement, while others exchanged worried glances. Miranda listened quietly, her mind weaving images of distant worlds and brave souls exploring the unknown. As debate continued, Miranda slipped away to the Royal Observatory. High atop a slender tower, telescopes and sensors scanned the sky. She watched the scouts at their workstations, adjusting lenses and checking data streams. On a glowing map, a small dot marked the human ship's path. The starship moved slowly, as if probing the borders of her world. She placed her hand on the cool metal rail and breathed in the scent of ozone from the instruments. She felt both fear and excitement in equal measure. Below the observatory, the palace guard prepared for any outcome. Soldiers polished their armor, strings of energy lights tracing the contours of their chest plates. They loaded rifles with silent energy rounds designed to stun. A captain of the guard, her brow furrowed, approached Miranda. "Your Highness," she said, "we stand ready to protect you and Orinthia, should you wish to see them first. We can arrange a peaceful meeting." Miranda offered a small, grateful smile. She trusted these warriors more than any advisor. Back in the council, voices rose in argument. Some urged caution, demanding the ship be forced away before it reached the capital. Others whispered of forging an alliance, of learning new technologies, and sharing knowledge. The tension was like a storm gathering on the horizon. Miranda felt torn. She understood the need for safety, but she also felt the lonely ache in her heart growing sharper. Could humans be the companions she longed for? Seeking clarity, Miranda called for a private meeting with Chancellor Isan. They walked through the rose gardens, where petals of silver and pale violet floated in the soft morning breeze. She spoke of her loneliness and her longing for connection. Isan listened, his face thoughtful. "Your people look to you for strength," he said. "They fear what they do not know, but you have the gift of wisdom. You can show them that friendship can come from unexpected places." Miranda nodded, resolve building within her. That afternoon, a royal envoy prepared to greet the human captain. At the edge of the palace grounds, Miranda donned her simple silver robe, fastening it with a clasp shaped like two entwined branches. She felt the weight of her role as princess and ruler. Her people watched from balcony windows and roof terraces, their eyes wide with wonder and worry. She took a steadying breath, reminding herself of her grandmother's courage. She would face this moment with the same calm heart. As the human ship descended through violet clouds, its engines humming like distant thunder, Miranda stood on a marble platform. Beside her were her advisors and the royal guard, all silent. In anticipation, the ship's landing struts touched the polished stone, sending a soft vibration through the palace floor. A hatch opened, and steps unfolded like a metal flower. Miranda's pulse raced. She felt fear, excitement, and hope all at once. She squared her shoulders and prepared to welcome the stranger who might change her world. When the first human stepped forward, Miranda saw kindness in his eyes. He wore simple armor and carried no weapon in hand. He bowed deeply, his voice calm as he spoke words in broken Orinthian. "I am Captain Reese of the human starship Advent," he said. "We come in peace and friendship." Miranda felt a warmth spread through her chest. In that moment, centuries of solitude seemed to lift, replaced by a new sense of possibility. The palace was still silent, but her heart sang with the promise of a new dawn. Princess Miranda stood at the edge of the palace courtyard as the human captain, and his crew stepped onto the polished marble. The violet sky cast a soft glow on their armor, and the torches along the walkway flickered in the gentle breeze. Miranda felt her heart quicken. She had seen the humans only from afar, in reports and maps, but now here they were, real and breathing. Beside her, Captain Reese offered his hand, and Miranda placed her pale lavender fingers in his. The touch was firm but gentle. He smiled, and his eyes held a kindness she had rarely seen among her own people. Behind him, his first officer, Lieutenant Kara, bowed respectfully. The human crew formed a small line, each waiting to be introduced. Miranda guided them toward a long table set beneath an arch of crystal columns. Servants moved quietly, carrying platters of warm breads, star berries, and bowls of sweet cream. The humans knelt and tasted the foods, nodding in approval. Miranda watched as Reese broke bread with his hands, sharing pieces with his crew and then offering one to her. She accepted it and tasted its soft sweetness, a simple act. But in that moment she felt the thread of connection between them. The air was filled with the sound of distant water from the courtyard fountain, and the soft hum of human voices. Lieutenant Kara told a story of how the humans traveled through a field of falling stars, each like a glowing pearl. Miranda listened with wide eyes, imagining the sky filled with tiny lights. She told of Orinthia's silver forests and crystal rivers. The humans leaned forward, eager to learn of her world. As the sky darkened, lanterns on long poles were lit. Their warm light shimmered on crystal walls and painted dancing patterns across the ground. Miranda led the humans to a low platform where a small cluster of cushions awaited. She sat and gestured for them to sit around her. They settled easily, their armor discarded for lighter garments they had brought for the climate. Reese produced a small device that projected a soft blue glow. He spoke into it, and shapes appeared, images of his home world, tall buildings of shining steel, oceans that stretched farther than the eye could see. The humans pointed to each scene and described their meaning. Miranda reached out and touched the glowing image of a blue ocean. She felt a longing to see it in person one day. In return, Miranda offered a delicate crystal flute filled with dew from the palace gardens. She lifted the flute and played a simple melody. The notes rose and fell like birds in flight. The humans listened in silence, then clapped softly when she finished. Lieutenant Kara rose and imitated the melody on a small human flute. The two songs mingled in the moonlight, a harmony that felt like magic. Through shared music and stories, Miranda and the humans discovered unexpected bonds. She learned that humans laughed easily and found joy in small things like a star berries, sweetness, or the ripple of water over stones. The humans learned that Orinthians valued wisdom and peace above all else. They spoke of explorers who carried seeds of distant plants to share with new worlds. When the meal ended, Miranda stood and walked among the humans, offering more food and listening to their laughter. She realized she had felt joy like this only once before, as a child among friends in the palace gardens. Now, under the violet sky, she felt that warmth again. Her odd features, which had once filled her with shame, now felt like part of the tapestry that made her unique. As the humans prepared to return to their ship, Captain Reese bowed deeply to Miranda. "Thank you for your kindness," he said in soft Orinthian. "You have shown us friendship." Miranda curtsied in return, her silver robe swirling. "Thank you for coming," she replied. "You have given me hope." She watched as the humans departed down the marble path, their figures retreating into the night after they left. Miranda remained by the fountain, its waters catching the torchlight. She held a single star berry in her hand, remembering how Reese had tasted the same fruit with delight. She tossed the berry into the water and whispered a quiet wish, "May this friendship grow." The ripples spread outward in gentle circles, and Miranda felt a promise in their movement. That night, Miranda slept peacefully for the first time in many years. She dreamed of human laughter mingling with the song of crystal fountains. She saw herself walking, not alone but with friends at her side. When dawn arrived, the violet sky welcomed her again. But this time she greeted it with a hopeful heart. The palace felt less empty, and the promise of new friendship filled every shining corridor. The lonely princess had found companions, and her world would never be the same. As dawn broke over the palace, Princess Miranda rose from her soft bed of silver silk. She felt a new excitement deep in her chest. Today, she would train with Captain Reese and his crew. She dressed in simple trousers and a fitted tunic, clothing meant for movement rather than ceremony. In the courtyard, the fountain's water caught the pale light and scattered tiny rainbows across the marble. Beneath, an arch of crystal columns, Reese waited with Lieutenant Kara and two human soldiers, each held a basic energy blade. Its soft hum barely louder than the breeze. Miranda approached with careful steps. She bowed to Reese, then to Kara. Reese nodded and offered her a blade. She hesitated at first, fingers trembling as she took the weapon. Its handle was cool metal, balanced and light. She did not know how to hold it. Kara spoke gently. "Place your hand here." Like this, she guided Miranda's grip, adjusting her fingers. Miranda tried again. She felt the hum of energy pulse through the blade. She flexed her wrist, and the weapon glowed softly at the tip. Her eyes widened in surprise. Reese called out a simple stance. Miranda watched as he and Kara stood with feet apart, blades angled defensively. She mirrored their pose as best she could. Her legs wobbled. Reese stepped closer and placed a hand on her elbow, steadying her. She drew a deep breath to calm the nerves in her stomach. The training began with slow movements. Reese moved his blade in arcs and circles. Miranda copied. Each swing of her arm made the blade sing through the air. At first, her strokes were clumsy. She cut at empty space and stumbled. Laughter bubbled from her lips, nervous but bright. Kara moved beside Miranda. She showed a block that looked like catching a falling leaf. Miranda tried it and felt the blade's energy pulse through her forearm. She held the block and smiled as the tension eased. Rumbles of joy grew in her chest. After an hour of practice, sweat dampened Miranda's tunic. She paused to catch her breath. The humans gathered around a low table set with fresh waters and pieces of sweet fruit. Miranda drank and ate, feeling strength return with each sip and bite. Reese sat beside her and told the story of his home world's games of skill. As she listened, Miranda felt a warmth spread through her limbs. She looked at Reese's friendly face. He did not judge her mistakes. He celebrated each small success. She realized that trust was not given in grand gestures, but in patience and kindness. When the sun reached its highest point, Reese asked Miranda to try a simple sparring form. The courtyard grew silent. She stood opposite Kara, who nodded in encouragement. Their blades met in a gentle clash. Miranda blocked, then shifted her weight and struck a careful blow. The sound rang like bells in a quiet room. Kara smiled and backed away. Miranda lowered her blade and bowed. The human soldiers applauded softly. Miranda felt a glow of pride. She had learned more in one morning than she had in years of palace lessons. That evening, the palace halls felt different to Miranda. She walked with steadier steps. Each tile beneath her feet seemed to echo with possibility. She heard distant voices and thought she imagined them cheering her name. She reached her private chamber and sat by the window, watching the first stars. appear in the violet sky dot in her hand. She held the energy blade. She traced its smooth handle. Remembering each lesson, she felt that blade was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of shared effort, of two peoples learning together. She placed it gently on a cushion, promising herself she would return to practice at dawn. Later, in the grand dining hall, the long tables no longer felt empty. Servants brought simple dishes of grain stew and fresh bread. Miranda invited a few trusted advisors to share the meal. They hesitated at first, then sat at her side. Reese and Kara joined from a low bench brought for them. As they ate, Miranda introduced her guests to human ways of eating with hands and breaking bread together. The advisors sipped the stew and nodded thoughtfully. When Kara told of human harvest festivals, the advisors exchanged curious glances. The hall filled with warm conversation. A stark change from its usual formality. After the meal, Miranda spoke. In a clear, gentle voice, "We have much to learn from each other," she said. The advisors listened. Some still showed worry, but others smiled at her words. Miranda felt the weight of solitude lift a little more when the humans departed for the night. Miranda walked them to the courtyard gate. Reese bowed to her. "We are honored to train with you," he said. "Your strength is growing." Miranda curtsied, her silver robe brushing the ground. "Thank you for your patience," she replied. "You have given me courage." She watched them ascend the path to their ship, its lights fading into the violet sky. Alone again, Miranda returned to her chamber, but her heart felt full. She knelt before the crystal window and closed her eyes. She sent gratitude into the silent night. As she rose, she knew that with each new dawn, she would grow in skill and spirit. The lonely princess was no longer alone. She had friends, and together they would face whatever came next. Princess Miranda woke with a sense of purpose. The sun had barely risen over the violet horizon when she left her chamber and made her way to the council chamber. The marble floors felt cool beneath her feet. Today, the nobles would decide if the human captain deserved her trust. The council chamber was larger than any room in the palace. Its ceiling soared like a mountain peak, and golden lanterns hung from chains carved in the shape of twisting vines. Around the polished stone table sat the High Council, 5 noble lords and ladies, whose families had ruled Orinthia for centuries. Their faces were grave as Miranda entered. Chancellor Isan rose to greet her. "Your Highness," he said softly, "the council awaits your decision." Miranda offered a small nod. She felt her heart beat faster, but she stood tall. The nobles bowed, their robes of red and blue rustling quietly. One of the oldest lords, Lord Darien, leaned forward. His silver hair was thin, and deep lines marked his face. "Princess," he began, "the humans have shown skill in combat training. Yet skill alone does not prove loyalty to Orinthia. We must be certain that they share our values." He paused. "We propose a trial. Captain Reese must defend the palace against a mock attack. If he succeeds, we will welcome him. If he fails, we will consider him a threat." Miranda closed her eyes for a moment. She knew her people's fears ran deep. Still, she believed that friendship was worth risk. She opened her eyes and nodded. "I accept your proposal," she said. "May the trial begin." Murmurs spread through the chamber. That afternoon, the palace courtyard transformed into a training ground. Wooden towers rose at each corner, and straw dummies lined the walls. Mirrors of polished metal stood in place of windows to simulate enemy spies. The royal guard and human soldiers gathered under the crystal arches. The assembled crowd included nobles, advisors, and curious palace servants. Captain Reese stood beside Miranda, his human armor gleaming in the sunlight. He bowed to the princess, then to the nobles. Lieutenant Kara and 2 human soldiers took positions near the courtyard gate. Orinthian soldiers, led by Captain Saral, stood at attention on opposite walls. Miranda raised her hand, and a scout fired, a flare into the air. Its blue smoke curled upward like a ribbon. The mock attack began. Straw dummies exploded outward as hidden traps released smoke and harmless sparks. Human soldiers sprinted forward, energy blades raised, while Orinthian Archers took aim from the towers. Reese called out orders in a firm, calm voice. "Hold the line," he shouted. Human soldiers formed a wall of shields. Stepping in front of Orinthian archers, Miranda watched as Reese moved with purpose, directing soldiers to key positions. His plan was simple: secure the towers first, then clear the courtyard. An alarm bell rang, and a wave of Orinthian guards marched in as mock attackers, their swords glowing with harmless training energy. They advanced under Kara's careful signals. Reese met them at the center, his blade humming as he blocked and parried. Each movement was precise, measured to conserve energy and avoid injury. Miranda felt her chest tighten with pride. In a few days of training, Reese had learned Orinthian tactics and had taught her own people new strategies. He moved between soldiers, encouraging them, correcting their stances. Orinthian guards began to mirror human footwork, their confidence growing with each exchange. After securing the towers, Reese turned his attention to the courtyard. He ordered a human soldier to disable the mirrored windows that pretended to be enemy scouts. With careful aim, the soldier shattered the mirrors. Kara signaled the archers to lower their bows and raise shields in solidarity. Side by side, human and Orinthian soldiers formed a protective circle around Miranda as she watched from the platform. The mock attackers fell back in the final phase. They were grouped behind a stone wall at one end of the courtyard. Reese planned the final move, a coordinated advance that would push the attackers back into a simulated canyon. Beyond the palace walls, he spoke quietly to Soral, the Orinthian captain. Soral nodded, then called his soldiers to follow Reese's lead. Together, they marched forward, human rifles echoing with harmless pulses of light. The attackers tried to resist, but quickly faltered against the joined force. In minutes, the mock assault ended with the attackers retreating beyond the wall. A trumpet fanfare sounded, and the courtyard grew silent. Miranda stepped forward, her silver robe flowing around her. She lifted her hand and called out, "The trial is complete, Captain. Reese has proven his skill and loyalty." The nobles rose, some clapping softly, others nodding in acknowledgement. Lord Darien stepped toward Miranda. His expression was serious but respectful. "Princess, the trial has shown that humans can stand with us," he said. "We will honor our promise." Reese knelt before Miranda and bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Highness," he said. His voice carried honor and humility. Miranda reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you," she replied. "Together, we will protect Orinthia." As the sun began to set, the courtyard emptied, but Miranda lingered. She looked at Reese. Standing tall among her people, she felt a warmth spread through her chest. Centuries of solitude had taught her patience, but this moment taught her that hope was worth pursuing. The trial had sealed a bond between two worlds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, Princess Miranda savored a victory born of trust and courage. As dawn broke, Miranda stood on the highest balcony, scanning the violet sky. The peaceful morning belied the danger at the systems. Edge scouts had reported a fleet of unknown ships approaching fast. Their dark hulls looked like storm clouds against the soft light. Miranda's heart pounded with concern, but she held herself steady. Beside her, Captain Reese checked his human sensors and nodded. "They are nearly here," he said in calm tones. Below, the palace guard readied their energy rifles and crystal shields. Orinthian archers climbed the towers, their longbows strung with gleaming silver arrows. Human soldiers took positions on the marble walls, setting up small pulse cannons. Miranda slipped from the balcony and walked among her people, offering words of encouragement. She touched a young guard's shoulder and smiled. "We stand together," she said softly. The enemy ships appeared over the farthest horizon like dark birds in flight. The largest ship led the formation, triangular and ominous. Smaller vessels fanned out behind it. The fleet moved with purpose toward the Crystal Palace. The palace's defense grid hummed to life, lines of energy forming barriers over the walls. Miranda watched as the barriers glowed faintly in the morning light. Reese raised his voice. "Hold fast and watch my signal," he shouted. The mixed force of human and Orinthian soldiers tensed. Miranda joined Reese near a side gate where the Scouts had laid hidden traps. She placed her hand on a glowing crystal console that controlled the trap spike walls that would rise, nets woven of hard light, and smoke canisters that would hide the palace's approach. With a nod from Miranda, Reese gave the signal. The first phase began. The spike walls shot up along the forest's edge, blocking enemy landing craft. Orinthian archers on the towers released volleys of arrows tipped with tranquilizing darts. Arrows arced through the air and struck enemy drones, sending them spiraling down in harmless sparks. Human pulse cannons boomed in reply, cutting through. Swarms of smaller ships. Miranda watched the battle unfold from the gate. She felt a surge of pride as her people fought beside the humans. She breathed in the crisp morning air and held firm. Suddenly, a squadron of enemy ships broke through the barrier and descended on the courtyard. Reese sprinted forward to lead the defense. Miranda joined him, drawing her own energy blade, a gift from the humans, its hum pulsing in her hand. Together, they advanced toward the courtyard. Human soldiers formed a protective wall in front of Orinthian archers. Weapons of energy and stone clashed in bright bursts. Miranda met an enemy drone on the marble floor. She raised her blade and pressed it against its hull. The drone emitted a low whine and shut down. Miranda stepped back, surprised by her own strength. Reese called out, "Take the left flank." He and Miranda raced to a side ramp. There, the enemy craft tried to land troops. Miranda tapped the console at her belt, and a net of hard light sprang from the wall, catching the craft and lifting it into the air. The trapped ship spun helplessly, its occupants suspended. Human soldiers quickly took control and dismantled the net. As the battle raged, Miranda remembered her grandmother's lessons of strategy. She spotted a channel of hidden tunnels beneath the courtyard. "Reese," she called. They approached through the tunnels. Reese turned, eyes wide with alert. He shouted orders, and a group of human engineers and palace guards sealed the tunnel entrances with energy barriers. Meanwhile, the main force of enemy ships tried to overwhelm the palace gates. Orinthian siege engines launched crystal shards that pierced the hulls of incoming vessels. Human rifles fired precise pulses that disabled targeting systems. The combined tactics slowed the enemy's advance. In the sky above, Lieutenant Kara piloted a small scout ship. She swooped over the enemy fleet, dropping canisters of smoke that masked the palace walls. Enemy pilots struggled to navigate the haze, gliding without hitting the palace. Kara's daring maneuvers bought precious time. Down below, Miranda and Reese stood back to back. Surrounded by human and Orinthian soldiers, they fought side by side, each defending the other's flank. When an enemy drone targeted Reese, Miranda stepped in and struck it down. When a crystalline arrow aimed at Miranda, Reese grabbed her wrist and pulled her away to safety. After what felt like hours, the enemy fleet faltered. Their larger ships began to retreat, and the smaller vessels scattered. Miranda watched as the last dark hull slipped beyond the forest edge. The courtyard grew quiet except for the hum of palace defenses winding down. Reese exhaled and turned to Miranda. "You fought bravely," he said. Voice rough with relief, Miranda smiled, her lavender eyes bright. "We fought together," she replied. They looked around at their people, humans and Orinthians alike, sharing relief and joy. In the days that followed, the palace ringing stayed, and the scars of battle were clean and repaired. Miranda walked through the halls with Reese and Kara, greeting soldiers and workers who patched walls and refilled energy conduits. She thanked them all for their courage. They bowed, their respect deep in their eyes. At sunset, the palace bells rang not for war, but for unity. Miranda and Reese stood on the grand balcony as people gathered below. She raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. "Today we have faced darkness and emerged together," she said. Her voice carried across the courtyard. "Human and Orinthian, we stood side by side. This victory is ours together." A cheer rose up, echoing against the crystal walls. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Miranda placed her hand on Reese's. She felt not just relief, but hope. The bond forged in training and battle had grown unbreakable. Together, they had protected Orinthia. Together, They would build a future of friendship and peace across the stars. As the first light of dawn colored the violet sky, Princess Miranda walked through the palace gardens with Captain Reese at her side. The gardens lay quiet, dew sparkling on silver pine needles and pale violet roses. Miranda breathed in the fresh air and felt peace settle over her heart. After weeks of training and battle, the palace had returned to calm. Still, Miranda knew that the real work of friendship had only just begun. In the Grand Hall, the Orinthian Council prepared a feast in honor of the humans. Long tables grown under platters of roasted root vegetables, crystal bowls of sweet cream, and trays of honey-glazed starberries. Lanterns hung from the high ceiling, their warm light reflecting off polished marble. The nobles and advisors, gathered in their finest robes, they whispered among themselves, some still cautious, others smiling with genuine welcome. Captain Reese and Lieutenant Kara entered the hall, their human uniforms clean and pressed. They bowed to Miranda, who wore a simple gown of pale silver that shimmered in the lantern light. She led them to seats of honor at the center of the hall. Around them, human soldiers and palace guards stood together, watching with quiet pride. Miranda rose and raised a crystal goblet filled with sweet wine. To friendship between our worlds, she said in clear tones. Her words echoed in the silent hall. Then the guests lifted their cups and echoed her toast. The sound felt like music to Miranda's ears. She smiled at Reese, whose kind eyes met hers with respect. The feast began. Servants moved like shadows, offering dishes and clearing plates. Miranda introduced human customs to the nobles. She explained how humans pass food with a shared plate and encourage others to taste new flavors. Some Orinthians hesitated, but as they tasted the creamy wine and soft breads, their expressions softened into smiles. Reese spoke of human festivals where music and laughter filled the night. He described dancing around fires and telling stories. Under starlight, the nobles listened, fascinated by the idea of simple joy. One young lady, Countess Celine, asked Kara to teach her a human dance. Kara laughed and agreed, promising to show the steps later that evening. After the feast, a troupe of palace musicians played soft melodies on crystal flutes and stringed instruments carved from pale wood. Reese produced a small drum from his pack and began a steady beat. Soon, Kara called to Countess Celine, and they invited Miranda and Reese to join the dance. The crystal floor rang with tapping feet and rustling robes. Miranda felt a rush of happiness as she moved to the music. She had not danced in these halls since childhood. The humans' laughter rose like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The nobles watched, some clapping in time, others smiling shyly. The dance bridged the gap between two worlds and filled the hall with light. Later, under the arch of moonlight in the courtyard, Miranda and Reese spoke alone. The fountain sparkled behind them, its water gentle. Miranda thanked Reese for everything he had done. "You have changed my world," she said softly. Reese took her hand. "You have shown us kindness and courage," he replied. "Your world is beautiful because of you." They spoke of future plans. Miranda dreamed of sending envoys to human worlds. She imagined Orinthian scholars studying human history and engineers learning new tools. Reese spoke of building a small embassy among the palace gardens where both peoples could meet and share ideas. Miranda agreed, her eyes bright with hope. As the night deepened, the humans prepared to depart. They would return to their ship to rest before the next journey. Miranda walked them to the palace gate. She paused and looked at Reese. "Stay as long as you wish," she said. "You are always welcome here." Reese bowed. "We will return," he promised. This is only the beginning. When the humans finally left, Miranda stood alone beneath the twin moons. She watched their ship lift into the violet sky, its lights fading among the stars. She felt a gentle joy and a quiet contentment. Her long years of solitude had ended. In their place, she had found friendship, trust, and love. Back in the palace, life moved forward with renewed purpose. Miranda held daily councils that included human advisors. Palace architects worked with human engineers to design new halls for shared study. Gardens bloomed with plants from both worlds, their flowers bright against the silver paths. laughter returned to the dining hall, and music drifted through the corridors each evening. Miranda stood at her balcony, watching the stars. She thought of the humans and smiled. The lonely princess had become a leader of unity. Her people had seen that friendship could conquer fear. And as the two worlds looked to the future together, Princess Miranda knew that the bond they had forged would shine across the galaxy for all time.